Welcome to another edition of the Willie Bragg Show. I am your host, Willie Bragg. And it looks like, according to the chat line here, Warren made it to Chicago. I hope everything is well over there. I hope starting everything anew in Chicago will be, uh, everything you want, and especially in the line of work that we do, comes to your dreams come through, Warren. So, hope you'll be happy there, and I hope the food was great on the train. So there's that. Let's see. Somebody named Grapentine was greeting us here. How you doing, Grapentine? And Daniel Berry Sports Highlights. How are you doing? Welcome back. Welcome back. So anyway, yeah, I guess we'll get started down to business. And all of y'all have heard already about this, but I wanted to go in and give my take on it. That basically on this is from the International Court of Justice. It was a press release that was unofficial, but it is kind of official, I guess you could say. And it's from The Hague, December 9, 2023. South Africa filed an application instituting proceedings against Israel before the International Court of Justice, the principal judicial organ of the United Nations, concerning alleged violations of Israel of its obligations under the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide, and i.e., the Genocide Convention, in relation to the Palestinians and the Gaza Strip. So, having that said, we know that that's news around the world, and of course, I agree with South Africa in what they're doing, because what the hell can it be other than a genocide against the people in Gaza? I mean, yeah, there's once again, there's no excuse in the world for the way Israel is behaving. It would have been one thing to respond directly to October 7th. It's another thing to over and confiscate and basically what they're doing, exterminating tens of thousands of people at this point. When's it going to end? So there's an article from the Guardian. It's called "Not Only Israel on Trial, South Africa is Testing the West's Claims to Moral Superiority" by Nasreen Malik. And I have to agree, because there's no moral clarity when it comes to what the United States, in particular, likes to do in terms of foreign policy around the world. So let's get started. Supporters of Palestine have been long told their positions is fringe, but this case gives them legitimacy and tests the limits of human rights. It was only a little over 6 hours of legal argument, but the genocide case brought by South Africa against Israel at the International Court of Justice had decades of history bearing down on it. The specifics dealt with Israel's assault on Gaza, but it is at its heart, the case was about something wider, closing the gap between the Palestinian reality and how the dominant political forces describe it. For weeks now, anger at the event in Gaza has spilled out onto the streets across Europe. Yet the anger has been resolutely ignored, dismissed, banned, or vilified by political leaders. Public supporters for a ceasefire is now at more than 70% in the UK, is not reflected in the position of either government or the opposition. Globally, condemnation of the violence from human rights organizations, the United Nations, and even the Pope has yet to translate into meaningful action from political leaders. So you can see where this is going here. And here in the United States, we've seen how, and this is my saying, not the author or the Guardian, what I'm about to say here, but you can see where the response here in the U.S. to people who dare question Israel's judgment. No, let me continue. A UN resolution calling for a ceasefire was blocked by the US. Of course, even the language of protest has been forensically analyzed to render it problematic or ignorant. Protesters have been accused of shoehorning the conflict into the trendy academic theory and indulgent modern preoccupation of leftist academics. The Foreign Secretary, David Cameron, thinks we should not bandy about the charge of genocide, although all this does is reflect what supporters of Palestine have been told for years. Your position is fringe. It is not based on evidence or morality, but rather on prejudice, radicalism, and more recently on quote unquote wokeness. In other words, Israel-Palestine conflict is complicated, best left to the grown-ups. What an attitude to have. What an attitude. This position was always premised on the fact that even if support for Palestine was popular, it was not potent. Rarely did it travel from the streets into the halls of power, and when it did, such sentiments could have always been blocked or dispersed. In voicing condemnation of Israel, Ireland, and ex-colonies, one of the few nations to break with the Anglosphere, it has been predictably portrayed as an outlier, a weak link in the chain of consensus, and another member of the scruffy ranks who do not have to shoulder the great responsibility that comes with great power. The submission of the ICJ challenged that portrayal in both in appearance and substance. It's matter to hear things that were not taken seriously enough, spelled out at a pitch that matches their graveness. It matters that these things investigated by the media outlets, reported by human rights organizations, and narrated by the Palestinians on the grounds are collected and listed on one address. 6,000 bombs a week. The first 3 weeks of the conflict, 2,000 bombs deployed at least 200 times. 85% of the Gazans displaced. 93% of the population facing crisis level of hunger. So, what can I say about that is, to me, what is a no-brainer in what's said in this article and my reaction. Unfortunately, people in the cusp of power sees things differently in the Western world. So let me, and even, well, I'll touch on that in a minute. It matters that these claims are linked to the Geneva Convention and human rights laws, and it matters that they are spoken in formal setting within the legal framework, uttered by lawyers and listened to by the judges. Even the sober ritual choreography of the proceedings was a sort of blessing. The overall effects is of empathetic enchantment of the rights of the people in Gaza. In that case, it matters less what the final ruling is, and the case was made in the first place. You can agree or disagree whether the legal hurdles for genocide has been met, or whether it even matters, if Israel and its allies will disregard it anyway. But in the making of a submission that recognizes the seriousness of the event and the seriousness of those events may amount to genocide, enough is presented to clearly illustrate that the international response has fallen shockingly short. And you can see here, this is from the International Court of Justice. I'll be glad to share this with you all as soon as, here we go. Well, as I said, this is kind of important because it, kind of set a precedent because what's what uh, Israel's just had so much backing from the West over the span of decades that it's that I mean, when it comes to something as extreme as this, because I mean, Israel's done many committed many crimes over the decades, but nothing amount to the level of that's taking place. If it makes some people feel too uncomfortable to say Hitler, or you can perhaps compare it to Cambodia's Pol Pot, or you can even go and compare it to Slobodan Milosevic in the former Yugoslavia, even if you'd like to do that. But here's the thing: Israel has run out of. It's basically, in my prediction, Israel it has a limited time to exist. I personally predict that Israel will cease to exist by the year 2035, and worldwide sympathy for Israel is depleting right now. I mean, their patience are running thin. And this is not just sitting there and bashing Israel just to bash Israel. This is a human rights violation right here, objectively. And the thing about it is, and I look forward today. I look forward to the day that Benjamin Netanyahu is arrested and put on trial for crimes against humanity. I make no apologies about it. You know, I mean, the fact that this man, when he was in Ariel Sharon's government 21 years ago as the foreign minister, was one of the leading Pied Pipers for the US and Britain and all their allies invading Iraq. I've said this before, not that Bush and Blair needed encouraging, but Benjamin Netanyahu was a loud supporter of the Iraq War. So we're talking about this man is a monster. He is absolutely a monster. Um, and I was so happy to see him gone a year and a half ago, whatever, when they did a special election where they had two new prime ministers. One was supposed to serve like a short amount of time, and another an amount of time, and the government was still far right, but the next election that allowed Benjamin Netanyahu to come back was the most right wing government they have ever elected. So far to the right that the right wing parties to the right of Likud in the Knesset, where the left has been totally just about squeezed out of any influence in that country. The government has gotten so far to the right, in the words of George Galloway, that Netanyahu is perceived as a moderate. So if he's a moderate in this government, you imagine how fascistic that the other parties are, and how extreme they are. And so I look forward to the day that the cabinet ministers in this present government and the and him himself will be arrested for crimes against humanity, because objectively that's what's happening right now in Gaza. So and it comes very close to home for South Africa, because during the days of apartheid, you remember this man, his name the late Nelson Mandela. He was in prison for 27 years for uh, basically trying to stand up against apartheid. And he was South Africa's apartheid government were so threatened by this man that they kept him behind bars. Um, and some people are going to be like, "Well, what is it? The South Africa? Are they being anti-Semitic?" Look. Israel used to be in partnership with South Africa during the days of apartheid. They weren't the only ones. The United States was too. Many Western countries were. It was done as a Cold War measure. And it was wrong that all these countries did that, had sought a partnership with apartheid era South Africa. I remember the Reagan administration was opposed to imposing any kind of sanctions against South Africa, claiming that it gives power to the communists and, it's going to strengthen the Soviet influence and all of that. And that was what the Reagan administration was all about. They didn't care about human rights because, they were preoccupied with defeating the communists. Look at Afghanistan during the 1980s. If there was a conflict that the U.S. during the Cold War should have let win on the communist side, I mean, my God, it would have been Afghanistan because, Reagan's actions contributed to 9/11 in a weird roundabout way. Well, let's get back to Nelson Mandela. In 1990, he was released after being in prison for 27 years. And the right wing in this country bashed him for his support coming from Fidel Castro of Cuba, the PLO leader Yasser Arafat, and Colonel Gaddafi of Libya, Muammar Gaddafi. And, how do I felt about it back then and today? Well, back then I was probably a little more revisionist in my opinion of Castro, Arafat, and Gaddafi at that time, meaning that I was a standard shit lib of its day, critical. Over the years, I have changed my tune on these three and found them all kind of benevolent in their own way. Having that said, even back then, in my pre-shit lib days, just as a partisan liberal, ass that I was at that time with the Democrats and all that, not about me, but just stating that I thought, I don't blame Nelson Mandela. The United States was against Black equality in South Africa. And the only people that were out there extending their hand of friendship toward the anti-apartheid movement was, it was Cuba. It was the PLO. It was Libya. And they were right to do so. They were right to do so. And the United States lacked any moral clarity on this subject. So, and all the right-wingers that wanted to criticize Nelson Mandela at the time, they were in the fucking wrong, obviously. So, I think it's kind of important what happened here, considering the history of South Africa in relations then and now. And I see where it makes sense for South Africa to go and follow this case on behalf of the Palestinians that live in Gaza and the Palestinians in general in regard to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. It's got to be put to an end. It's got to be put to an end where Palestinians can have their own land. It's got to be brought about by the most peaceful means necessary. So innocent Israelis also are not going to be suffering. You don't want innocents on any side to suffer. So as far as I'm concerned, I do stand with South Africa today in the year 2024 when it comes to the International Court of Justice and the fight to end apartheid. And so apartheid within Israel itself, where the other apartheid was taking place. And there's hardly anything controversial. I remember people being criticized when they referred to Israel as an apartheid state. But even the Israelis said, acknowledge this as a form of apartheid. So if they're willing to say it's in a form of apartheid, then it should not be controversial as far as I'm concerned. And what should matter more foremost is human rights across the board, and to be for it consistently. So, and when it comes to if you want to talk about even from a Western centric standpoint, what Israel's doing violates everything that is Western. when it comes to the situation in Gaza. It defies, what Westerners would call core decent values of the West. If you want to be generous toward a Western-centric outlook on life, it will violate that. So, I hope that there will be justice, and that the International Court of Justice will rule in favor of South Africa, in favor of the Palestinian people, which means they will rule in the long run in favor of the oppressed around the world. And so that is where I stand on that. So, and I just kind of wanted to get this out of my chest right now, and talk about it and everything. So we have here also. Oh yeah, let me answer this. Yeah, yeah, Pacho Ron. Hey, how are you doing today? Yeah, Warren did move to Chicago. He's in Chicago right now. So he's no longer a resident of Brooklyn, New York. Hey Miguel, how are you doing today? So anyway, what else is going on here? Do we have any more chats? Not right now at the moment. I just want to talk about this, and just bring it out today and all of that. And I will also want to say that to make a special request once again to all the folks that have subscribed to my channel over the years. I appreciate each and every one of you more than you know. And I had a subscriber today, so I thank them as well. So and I hope to see this channel grow, not necessarily because of for my own self-preservation, but what I think is a necessary space on the left. I think I provide a unique perspective that complements some of my fellow people, my peers on this space, and I would like to continue doing this. It's not done as a form of living or anything. This is a labor of love that I do this. So so there is that. So I'm going to ask each and every one of you, if you haven't subscribed yet to this channel, please subscribe to the Willie Bragg Show. Right now, we're trying to get this channel up to 1,000 subscribers. It's been a long haul, so if you could help out, I appreciate it. And if not, just enjoy the show. But anyway, suffice to say, let me conclude by saying, if you like what you heard, please press like and comment. Comment any way if you disagree with what I have to say. Feel free to share the content on this channel. As the First Amendment absolutist, it's my duty to inform you to create your own platform and utilize it, because we are the muckrakers of our time. Reject corporate media and be sure to subscribe to the Willie Bragg Show. And I'll go and conclude right now with, I guess you could say, my new motto in life. That is free Julian Assange, free Palestine, free healthcare, and free speech. And I mean those things equally. So until next time, I'm Willie Bragg. Y'all take care. I'll stream again very soon. Promise. Good night.